Welcome, Kevin, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
I'm really looking forward to chatting with you and hearing your story. I know it's a really powerful one, so everyone can buckle up here. Kevin, let's start up first. Where in the world are you tuning in from?
I'm tuning in from a small town in eastern North Carolina, Edenton, North Carolina. It's on the eastern shore. Think about you hear on TV about the Outer Banks and Cape Hatteras and all that. It's the water in that area behind that area there. So I'm kind of maybe about an hour south of Norfolk, Virginia there. So in that part of the world there on the East Coast.
Okay, okay. Well, fantastic. Thanks for joining us and taking some time to tell your story. Kevin, let's dive right into it. Tell us a little bit about you. Who is Kevin, and what brought you to this podcast today?
Well, kind of long and arduous story, but basically, in the topic of my book, my social mind, my story of terror, truth, and mainly triumph, is I was raised by a diagnosed sociopath, and the abuse of all types started at really an infant on up and for about the first decade of my life. So much that at age 4, I actually dissociated during abuse thing and really kind of just existed and wandered through life. Had a very good career at a Fortune 5 company and worked and did all that, but things just all of a sudden in my late 40s, a new boss and manager kind of came in and just didn't rub me the right way. And I didn't know what it was about. And it, long story short, kind of reminded me of mom. I didn't know it at the time. Things unraveled. And after a decade of therapy and EMDR, I really came to terms of what happened. After coming through with what happened and doing all of that, actually, the person you're supposed to trust the most in your life is your mother, which didn't happen. But then on the backside of life, I actually had to become the primary caregiver for my abuser for the last 10 years of her life there. So up through the conclusion of her life in 2019, quite a story where finding my mental, spiritual health, talks about, forgiveness and, who's it for and a lot of different things. So I worked through that part. During COVID, therapy had to stop, obviously. So I was working with someone as a ghostwriter a little bit there and talking about this stuff. And she's like, Kevin, this is a story you need to tell. Wasn't planning on writing a book, but about 4 years of working through that stuff and putting it out there and really wrestling with God. Hey, at the time it was like 59. Do I really want to put all my garbage out on the street for the world to see? But kept coming back to the fact that a lot of people are stuck out there in their own way with some sort of problems, abuses, addictions, you name it. And it does no good for me to process that but if I can share and help one person realize that they can overcome anything if they try different and better, is where I landed. Launched the book last summer, doing well. It actually made bestseller on Amazon and won a couple literary awards. And just really out here trying to share that message about that people can overcome. We are a society that's really stuck in anxiety, addiction, depression, and all sorts of things and negative connotations, and it can change, and that's really what my message is.
It's a powerful message, Kevin.
Yep. It's just a lot happening over those years in time, and we can either become a victim or a victor, and that's what I chose in this path. And while there's still things that are going on, I've overcome complex PTSD and dissociative identity disorder and things of that, and a lot of therapy, but anything is possible. And now I'm retired, living down in Eastern Carolina on the water, living a good life, and things can move forward for your audience. I want you to know that there, but you can't do it on your own. White knuckling and doing it on yourself will not lead to the results you need in life. You really just got to work through it.
Not the truth. The story that you've been through is a really, really powerful one. It's to go through not only abuse, but to then have to circle back and take care of that abuser, really would have been a reckoning for you, I can imagine. To be confronted again with all of that pain and all those experiences. My understanding then, Kevin, if you had kind of dissociated and you didn't remember any of those experiences, and then they came back to you later in life. Is that right?
They came back at age 4 during one of particular abuse episodes there. I called it, I go to the white room, I called it there, where I kind of just existed from then forth there. So kind of I aligned myself in the book to kind of, the Terminator movies, Arnold Schwarzenegger, kind of a robot, just kind of existing. I went through life kind of mirroring, not really emotionally connecting with people, but just watching and learning and trying to fit in and
I see.
work hard and plow ahead. And then that incident at work with the new manager, it just came in and after a lot of therapy figured out that she was just kind of reminding me of that younger version of mom and the mannerisms, not as an aggressive anything like that, but just that kind of all about the center of the room kind of personality there, and something just visceral just started to connect where I actually got in trouble at work about some of this stuff and just had to, it's like, oh, well, you can keep your job and all, but you need to get some help. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll just go beat therapy like I've beaten everything else. I was successful at work. And that obviously didn't work out that way and came to a long reckoning of remembering through regular therapy, but mainly EMDR, which is
Mm,
a type of cognitive therapy where it taps into your subconscious there. A lot of times our subconscious will block us from harmful memories to protect us, which this did for all those years. But it's a therapy technique that either uses tappers or finger movements or different types of things to help occupy that conscious mind so that you and the therapist can safely explore. And wow, that really took me back to those spots there where I was a child and all that. And it was quite a reckoning of going through in a long, arduous period of work to get through that stuff. And no much so, we were chatting before about you being a new mom there. Right around 9 months after getting through all of this and finding my mental and my spiritual health, because I did have to go through a forgiveness and awakening there, and we can talk more about that later. But I got a call that, the mom was still, pill shopping. The wall in the house had fell in. They needed somewhere to live, and I had to come in and try to reckon with that and deal with her and play cat and mouse the last 10 years, trying to keep her safe and in a facility that would take her. And it's a lot in the book about that stuff, but it's quite a cat and mouse journey and back and forth. So don't want to say it was a ta-da moment like, oh, I'm forgiven, forget. It's not about that. It's very real and takes time, but do want your listeners to understand that forgiveness is not for the person that's offended you, it's for yourself there. It's to unshackle you from that ball and chain so you can go on and live your life there. And that's where I was really dragging that ball and chain around for decades and just
yeah.
thinking I was living, but I really won't. And I'm sure you've got some listeners out there that in their own way that have some similar circumstances. And you feel like you can't unshackle from that, but you truly can. It is
Mhm.
possible.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? I think that it's important to bring that back up. That forgiveness is not for the person, it's for the forgiver. It's for the person who's doing the forgiving. Uh, do you feel that you came to that conclusion quickly, or do you feel like that was something that kind of took that cat and mouse 10 years, or how did that unfold for you, that forgiveness?
Yeah, it wasn't magical ta-da. I did doing near the completion of some of my EMDR work. I was invited on a spiritual men's retreat weekend there, where I had opportunity to come forward and kind of let go. And of course, through the whole weekend, I was still Terminator Kevin, treating it like a SEAL Team 6 mission, just kind of mirroring the room, watching what's going on, and just, oh, I'm here. But something struck me when I went up to do that. I did at that moment least unburden myself of all that negativity when I went up and asked, to the pastor there. I just said, I'd like to be relieved of this. I'm struggling with unforgiveness there. And he explained about with the definition we talked about and what that's for and kind of prayed over me there. And I felt a lightening and a lifting for sure to initially start that role because I was really like, again, that movie, The Terminator. It just keeps coming back there and just going and going. But then having to deal with her, it was challenged daily. And I think the reckoning probably came near the end of life there. I started and end the book there with the hospital scene in the book with her and all that. And I think that's where it truly let go on that there. And for your viewers, it's not some hallmarky type thing. It's a struggle. I sit there thinking about forgiveness or putting a pillow over her face, to be honestly, both at the same time. We're human. You struggle with that stuff and all of that. But once you kind of reckon yourself and realize that and let yourself go, you can start moving forward. But the short answer, it was more of a journey and still a journey today versus a destination, to be honest.
Mhm, mhm.
You never
You know,
forget. Yeah.
isn't that the truth? Yeah, and it
Yeah.
informs your life going forward. Like, I think that forgetting would be a disservice to us. I think
Yeah.
that we can forgive and disconnect ourselves emotionally, spiritually, physically from the experience. But in the forgetting, we would lose the lessons. And there's so many powerful lessons that come with our experiences, whether done unto us or around us. And so I'm curious then, I can hear a lot of dichotomy in what you're saying, Kevin. Like I can hear you saying, I found forgiveness, but it's a journey. I can hear you say, I did this therapy, but I at times I just was like I contemplating forgiveness, but still like, that pillow there looks pretty tempting, all that good stuff. And I really appreciate your there's Jekyll and Hyde that really kind of has been in play for you for years, many, many, many years. And I think it's important to pivot on that for a moment and just pause on that and just say, we are human. I like how you said that we are human and that it isn't a hallmark moment, though it's one of those things that everyone wants that. We want to just no longer feel the pain. We don't want to no longer feel the sadness, the hurt, the anger, etc. But it lives on. And so I'm curious, how do you find moments of joy amid the dichotomy that it is probably always playing out in your mind at times?
Absolutely. And well, first is those steps we talked about, and you have to recognize and do that and give yourself grace and therapy. And I talk about, you think about a tripod that holds something up, that there's three legs of that. And there's for me, that's the physical, mental, and spiritual health. If one of those legs is kind of out of balance, the tripod can't support whatever it's holding up there, whether it's a telescope or whatnot. So, you have to work on all three. You can't go all in therapy and be 100% therapy. You can't be this uber ultra athlete. I work out, I do Spartan races stuff. So you can't do all or other, or you can't be so uber into your religion where it's totally consuming it and that's the only lens you see through. It's a balance of the three to start the foundation of healing and doing that. And that is really what I feel is most important of that. Once you start that, then you can find those joyful moments. You can find it coming, out of a therapy or remembering something through a different lens, through your exercise or running a race and seeing you're out in nature and seeing the beauty of, the nature. Spiritually, just realizing that, God's purpose and plan is out there for us. And, He didn't promise us no pain, but He promised us no more than we could handle. And what you do with that is up to you and working through that. So, moments of joy. Like I said, I'm blessed here. I live on the water where I can get out and be around and in the community and get out on the water and kayak or do things or golf. So, there's grateful for my family and a lot of things that are going on in my life. But I think foundationally, you have to find your balance. And as you can tell, I'm a spiritual person, but I don't pontificate that you have to follow one thing of faith, but you have to have some sort of spiritual balance, whether people are struggling with addiction, the 12 steps leans into that as well. You have to have some sort of spiritual background. And mental health, most of us, especially men, believe that the old balled up knuckle is the best way to handle anything, to white it out there. But a lot of folks I talk with there, if you take and squeeze your hand together tight, Christine, real quick there, with me and hold them tight, squeeze tight, and then let go, what feels so much better? The blood flowing out of that. But when you're doing this, you're holding captive your unforgiveness, your pain, your sobriety, your addiction, your mental health in your hand until you open up to the possibilities and try different and better. You simply will never find it. And that's where I started to find the joy when I finally opened up my hand and do that. Now, it's a learned behavior for someone that acted like on autopilot, like a Terminator for 4 or 5 decades. But I can say, looking back in the rearview mirror there, the work was much worth it, and I'm much happier than I am now, than I was back in the day, thinking I was happy.
Amazing. I have so many things to say. First of all, your metaphors are fantastic. Thank you for being such a powerful storyteller. I can hear them, and I am as I hear them, they make so much logical sense. And that's one thing that I really love talking to men in these sorts of conversations, because you have such a logical way of explaining things that are so clear. So thank you for that. Your metaphors are fantastic. The tripod and how you can't be all in on any one of those things, the balled up fists and holding all of that tightness. You know, bravo. The next thing that I want to say there too is, how you said thinking that you're happy and realizing that you're not. This is such a common thing with human beings. We don't want to turn towards the pain because that's painful. But the problem being that, the life that we're living, avoiding that pain, is kind of this half-hearted version of joy. It's being tainted with, whatever it is. It's your alcoholism or your exercise or whatever it is that you're using to hide away from that, and you're never getting this full expression of joy. Would you say that that was your experience as well then after doing the tripod and moving away and opening up your fist?
Yeah, you really just realize you're living a facade there. You think, I mean, I was very successful in leadership at a Fortune 5 top, in what I did, best in class, won a lot of accolades and things, and had a good career and money and things, but stuff doesn't buy it. The Amazon app isn't going to solve anybody's problem there. You can immediately think and get something in a day or so, but stuff doesn't do it. You have to and facing it doesn't mean it consumes you and you go dig up under every dirty rock and whatever. It's acknowledging it for yourself for what it was with the support of a professional to realize, and then what can you move forward from that? Don't forget it, but it's shaped to where you are, but it hasn't shaped who you can become.
Mm.
I'll say that again, shaped who you were, but doesn't shape who you can become out there. And that's where really it does that joy. You're right about that. It's like, you have these really super dark sunglasses on and you don't see but just a little bit of the room around you. But when you take them off, you can see all the colors and the things out there. You have to remove those lenses and get into that. And really then you have to actively rewire our brains because when we get into any type of habit, and it doesn't have to be depression, addiction, anxiety, just really bad habits of negativity, is toxic, with social media and things, they're neurowired to try to get us to look at the bad instead of the good. You have to find your balance and be able to do that, like you talk a lot about in your podcast. You have to look for the wellness and the goodness and things out there and not just what's flawed. And some people, including myself, if like anything else, if I've never ran, I couldn't get up and run a marathon tomorrow. You have to do it, and it takes practice and diligence and intention. So once you set your intention to different and better, most people try things, but they try the same things over and over and wonder why they don't work. Why is my relationship flawed? Why don't I feel good? Well, you have to try different and better, and that's what I advocate to everyone is. And different and better doesn't mean what's different and better for Kevin or Christine. There's a lot of things out there and options, but you just have to try something different to move yourself towards that joy and happiness.
Mm. I know you speak about that different and better quite a bit. I'm curious, is this something that you frame in your book? Is there something that you can give us a little bit of a glimpse in on what different and better would look like?
Yeah, different and better. So, oh my, I'm stuck in this job. It's never going to work for me. I'm never going to get promotion. So and so got promoted and I didn't. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and then wonder why versus stepping out or trying, for example, hey, what do I need to do to get promoted? Talking about I'm stuck in a bad relationship or I drank too much, whatever. It means just taking different action. We're creatures of habit, and all of us have our routine. Do you get up in the morning? Do you scroll? Do you read? Do you walk? Doesn't make your routine bad or wrong, but if your routine isn't working for you, you've got to try something different and better than the same thing that you were doing. And it applies to really anything in life.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for giving us a glimpse into that. Different and better. I really enjoy that as well. So in your book here, would I understand then that we've got the story portion, the memoir, the experience that you went through, and then there might be a bit of a guide afterwards, a little bit of information on how we can apply these own principles into our lives. Is that correct?
There's a little bit of that in there, but I kind of keep it raw and real because, like we're talking about, I don't want to make it kind of this hallmarky magical, it's all good, because it isn't, but you have to keep working it. But I do lay some foundations about that and kind of with the tripod and things about a little bit about it, but it's more of the journey, the twists and turns. There's a lot of folks that have been out there struggle with abuse and addiction and all of that, but not many have had to go back and care for their abuser and things like that, and all the things. And also takes you under the hood to the workings of a diagnosed sociopath, which I had her later in life diagnosed as. So, uh, and how their world they don't see right and wrong there. That they see whatever their means are, and the ends justify the means to them, regardless. They don't see it through the lens that we do. So you get a glimpse into that. You get a glimpse into forgiveness and the true struggle of trying to move forward in life and forge healthy relationships and leave other, mental health and addiction and other things behind and trying to find a balance and work forward. So there's a lot baked into that, and also just a extremely unique story that I kind of really speak in an authentic tone that doesn't really hold back. You hear my vernacular, and it kind of comes through and the storytelling of what's going on and all of that. But yes, you do get some glimpses into all that. It's a lot baked in there. People see the cover and go, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to hear about a kid getting abused." It's not as much about that as it's a portion of the book, but there's a lot of building and foundation and over a life and how what's taken me, half a century to get to, a lot of people could do in a matter of months if they truly reached out to the resources and started finding their own different and better. And that's what really motivated me to write the book.
I can hear that in this experience, this story that for the person who's maybe been through abuse, they might find reading the story quite cathartic, and how they may feel quite seen. And then for anybody who's really been through any really kind of difficult experience that happened to them, they might be able to find a lot of release in the steps that you took, to begin to heal yourself as a person, as well as some of those foundational pieces. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. It doesn't, don't have to be raised by a socio mom that abused you for a decade. I like to say there's no measuring stick on trauma and abuse there. A 20-second encounter can leave the scars that something in decades could leave on that. There's not a measuring stick. Where the flaw is most people pack it down or mask it or self-medicate or go to the doctors and the doctors put them on anxiety or depression meds when they're not really treating what's happened or dealing with it. So it doesn't have to be whatever, but it's acknowledging and taking that first step, and it's taking that step with a team and not just the team of one, because you will, if your listeners hear nothing else, you cannot overcome these things by yourself. We're not intended and created to just struggle and muddle through life on our own and figure it out. You know, there's billions of people on the planet because for a reason there, and we all have shared experiences and all. And once you open your eyes and try to start trying those different and better things, doesn't mean you have to stop medication or go to an AA meeting or do this or run a marathon. But you got to reckon with yourself. I'm not happy with where I'm at, and I want different and better. That's the starting foundational point. And once you do that, the doors were open spiritually. I would say lean into that and, get guidance. Therapy is important, but also physical movement and health there. We can just we could spend, 6, 8 hours a day staring at our devices there and just keep getting fed. Think about eating and if you only ate the same food all the time there. But that's kind of you if you're any of your listeners are really looking at, wow, I had a bad breakup, I had a bad thing happen at work, or I'm disappointed in my kid, I'm worried about this. How much energy have you put into that? And then I would ask them, 12 months ago, what was your biggest concern or worry? And can you really remember what that was? And did it really come to fruition that worst case scenario? Probably not. And then start moving forward from there.
That's really powerful first steps for the person listening who might be going, well, where do I begin, Kevin? So thank you for those. Well, as we begin to wrap up here, I'm really curious, first of all, if you have ever considered speaking, because you are a fantastic speaker.
Yeah, thank you. I have been doing some of that since the book there. I'm, on the Salem Speaker Network and also do things. I've tried to find if any of your audience out there has any things. I'd love to come. I didn't write the book or do anything for any monetary gains. I just want to help, but I do like to get out and talk to folks in different groups about stuff like that and try to shatter that realm before we think of everybody stuck in and you can only do something one way. I can only overcome this by doing this thing and going here and spending all this money. No, it's while those things, I'm not demeaning any of those things and they work, but recovery and living the life that you deserve to live is accessible to everyone. And I do love it. I've been going out and doing speaking engagements. I have my own website, mysocialmom.com, that people can contact me there as well as some other things. And I'm on social media. But I am looking to explore and build out that because worked a lot of that. And I talk about it in the book. Part of my reckoning, I ended up being a youth pastor for about 10 years during this time. It kind of helped to balance me out while I was caring for my mother. And there's so many of our young people that, them and their parents, their first generation, are raised on what I like to call that $1,000 pacifier, that phone in their hand, and
Hmm.
or or defining their identity through what, apps and social media and tell them they should do there. So I'm very passionate about getting out and trying to break down these paradigms for young people and adults as well. It's worse even in adults because we get stuck in our ways there and we just keep repeating those same things over and over again. But yes, I do enjoy that, and thanks for the compliment. I um, part of that I allude to it in the book there, that Terminator mindset and not being able to fit in. I learned, part of my language and metaphors is how I related and learned over the years to connect with all of that because I didn't grow up in that warm and fuzzy environment of nurturing where you learn with family and all that stuff. So it you know it's kind of a byproduct of the journey there. If my narcissistic sociopath mom were there, she would probably laugh and say, "Why aren't you thanking me for that, Kevin?" See, but
Jeez.
a little humor here, but it it is an opportunity that I am trying to cultivate with the publishers right now.
Okay. What are all the things that you're doing right now then? What does life look like for Kevin? You've got your book, you've got some potential speaking gigs on the roster. You've done some pastoring, you've done some speaking. What's life looking for like for you now?
Yeah, a lot going on. I retired from my career about 2 years ago, and
Okay.
so I've done a lot finishing the book. It took about 4 years. Launched it. We've done a lot of launch and things related to the book with social media and all sorts of things, and keeping that stuff going. We're working, developing book signing, doing things with podcast. I enjoy this forum because people will look at a book and like, oh my, I'm not sure if I want to read that. It's kind of like, oh, I don't want to go, dig through the dumpster and pick up the smelly fish in the dumpster kind of thing. But talking about it, people understand what my mission is. So I'm really working on doing a lot of that daily routine. I work out boot camp style, about 4 days a week with a bunch of guys a lot younger than I am out there called F3 Fitness Fellowship and Faith. We meet at 5:30 in the morning and do workouts and stuff like that, and keeping me going there and working through the book and just starting to enjoy and figure out life there, slowing down.
Mm.
say some of your folks are out there, your career and your work doesn't define you. Sometimes you hide behind that, like I did, and I just encourage people to don't miss life by trying to think you're living life by climbing a ladder or trying to reach some accolade or something like that. You miss the people around you, your family and your friends, and what life is really about. So you can do both, but don't let one come out of balance of the other there. So that's kind of what my journeys are. They're also working on potentially some looking and making this kind of maybe a somehow a book to screen, whether it's a docudrama or other things like that, because of the uniqueness of that. And just encourage your listeners to take a listen, not for the book or whatever. It's out there on all forms, Kindle, Amazon, Audible, audiobooks, all that stuff's out there. But anybody out there that's struggling can relate to this and try that there. So, but that's kind of my life. That I got my old chocolate lab here at Winston. It's my therapy dog. We hang out and go do stuff there, enjoying time with my wife, doing things in the community here. We moved out of Richmond, out of a big city, down to this area about 3 years ago, and just really enjoying that reset there. I really think it was spiritual guidance. We didn't plan on this town, didn't even know of it, but just being here and it's really helped me start to see. So exactly where I'm going is a lot of things happening, but old Kevin would be, let's go win, conquer all of them in 5 minutes and do all of that. And I'm trying to be anti-Kevin here at this stage and kind of let those things practice what I preach, Christine.
Good for you. Oh, that's awesome stuff. And thank you for that final piece of advice here, for the listeners that, don't let life pass you by while you're trying to kind of terminate everything.
Yeah,
Good
I would
stuff,
just add
Kevin.
to the list. Yeah, I would just add to the listeners is you can overcome anything. Doesn't regard your previous circumstances, your current circumstances, lack of money, too much money, all those things. None of that matters. You can overcome anything if you put your mind to doing different and better and include some sort of form of spiritual, mental, and physical health and not do it on your own. If you start that journey, you will get the results. I guarantee that. And I just hope that whoever's listening, one person can try something different tomorrow and move to where they deserve to be in life there because we were all created to be happy and full of joy and not carry around this baggage of regret, shame, and all these negativity emotions that are out there.
Well, thank you for answering my last question of what would you leave the listeners with? Fantastic.
Yeah, nope. Sorry, I didn't jump the gun there, but that is, and it's truly if you're struggling out there, and a lot of people you don't realize, unless you've been there, they hide and think they aren't struggling and don't want to own it. But the first thing is, if 10 is happy and you're not a 10 today, you deserve to be a 12 and you can be. You've never experienced it, but you never will doing what you're doing today. So just leap out in faith. Reach out to me through the website or social media, comment. I'm happy to encourage or help or talk to anybody individually or in groups, but great things can happen when you put your mind to it, Christine.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. I will link all that in the show notes, and I just thank you again for being here today with us.
My pleasure being here, and thank you for all you're doing with your podcast. It's a pleasure being here.